Hey friends!
Hello.
Happy Thursday!
How are you? Hey, Margaret. How are things? Hey, Sally. It's really great to see you all.
It's finally getting warmer. It's feeling like summer today.
I'm not sure why we're wearing sweaters because, it's knitwear, but
Yeah, it was hard.
let's Aimee.
Hi!
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Is it super humid where you are?
It is actually right now, it is kind of lovely outside. It was like 89 degrees here today. And tomorrow I think it's going to be in the 90s. So Richmond, Virginia-esque weather is kind of all over the place because it was like 50 degrees last week. And and my allergies are sort of flying their flag today as well. So if I have a coughing or sneezing fit while we're chatting, I swear I'm not sick. I just,
Yeah.
I live in Virginia.
Totally.
That sounds similar to, here, we were just saying the same thing. It's like
humid right now.
It's humid,
Yeah.
It got warm enough that allergies are, you feeling it. But last week it was cold.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, we had the heat.
I know, I'm in like sleeveless and sweating and.
Yeah, my daughter's like, can we get the pool out? Can we get the pool out? And I was like, I guess. That's 2 days in a row. I guess we should.
Right.
Wow.
And I guess technically it's pool season, like.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
How does that affect, does it just take you a lot longer does the yarn take a lot longer to dry at this time of year?
Oddly, it's quicker right now. Like in the winter, it's, our studio. So we have our studios in our house. We moved almost 2 years ago so that we could have like proper workspace. And so sort of on the ground floor of our house, like there's a garage and that's where our dye studio is. And it keeps things nice and cool in like when the weather's like super hot. But it keeps things nice and cool when it's really cold out. And so our drying time is actually a lot longer in the winter than it is now. Like right now, on a day like today, we could have like rolled our drying racks outside and they would have, they would dry pretty fast.
Oh, right. No,
Stanley agrees. He's a barker, so I apologize. You're going to probably hear a lot of him this evening.
Perfectly
He's
fine.
saying hi.
Yes.
So do you have others that are helping you out with everything, or how are you doing it?
Yeah, so it's just me and my husband Brian. We do it together. And about 3 weeks before the pandemic struck last year, we had just brought on someone to help us. And so for 3 glorious weeks, we had someone that was coming in and helping us prep yarn and helping us label, like all the stuff to kind of free me up to start, being able to take on some other things. And then, so
all the other things.
Cute.
Yeah. So we're still back to being more of a duo operation, and he has his jobs and I have my jobs, and we have jobs together, and so it would be awesome to have and some assistance. But we're at that sort of place in our business where we could grow it and take on employees, but then that's taking on employees, and I'm an artist, not a manager. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
A lot. That's hard to like having the artist be the person who has to do the things that are not in their wheelhouse has got to be so jarring. I do the other things. So.
Right. And you know, some of this stuff I don't mind doing, like, you know, sort of, I'm not, you know, like updating website stuff and, you know, taking care of stuff. I don't mind spending a day every once in a while just at my desk in the office. I have another friend who's a potter, and so she, like, anything that's not involved with like her hands in clay, she's just like, you know. And I don't feel quite that way about it, but it would be, you know, nice if I didn't have to do it too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But, you know, like with any job, it's a job, and there are things that you like about your job and things that you don't like about
We
your
were just talking about this.
We were just talking
right
about
before
this
we logged
15
on.
minutes ago.
job. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's great to work for yourself.
Yes.
Because I think the thing that is the greatest is that you can, maybe, if circumstances are right, you can take yourself where you need to go. You know, like there are no bounds to what you can create and
Right.
but
Yes.
it's also really like, it sucks, you know, filing your own taxes, and
Yes.
you know, it isn't fun to field customer service emails all day, every day.
No.
It's not fun to do certain things. Like, we don't have the choice of not you know, if we don't show up, you know, our parents like to say, like, well, just, you know, take some time.
Down.
Just relax. Take the weekend off.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It
No.
sounds good, doesn't it?
It does. It sounds great. It sounds great. And I will say, I come from a long line of people who have owned their own businesses.
Okay.
So like my dad owned a convenience store
Awesome.
well, I mean, he owned a couple of businesses before that, but when I was growing up, that's the one that I remember. And, you know, he had a store, and actually when he was a kid, his dad, like in very rural Appalachia, like owned a store, and I think his father owned like some general stores. And when I say stores, I mean, like, you just imagine like the general store in the middle of nowhere where people come to pick up their mail, and they sell feed. And, you know, the Coke machine is literally like a box with a pipe of water running through it to keep things cold. And my dad, you know, he used to say that he had his first job when he was 5, and that was because the guys that loafed around the store would pay him a nickel to sing. And but he was too shy to come out from behind the counter.
But he was getting that nickel, boy.
Oh yeah, no, he you know, he worked from an early age. Not only did they have the store, but they farmed too. So like, he really did work from a very early age. But you know, he and I, when I see him, you know, we talk shop, we talk business, and like he, you know, yeah, my grandmommy was a postmaster for a while, so you know, it's in the blood, as it were. And I'm so grateful. Brian and I talk all the time about how we don't have to have real jobs. Like he's a musician. Like, I mean, he and I are Little Fox. We are the business, but he also plays music for a living. And so, you know, both of us are super grateful that we don't have a real job. I mean, I don't know what else to, you know, it's really hard work, but after having been self-employed in one way or another for, well, almost 2 decades now, it feels, you know, like the idea of having, like, you know, a boss is, you know, like I'm used to making those decisions. And so,
and I think it kind of helps you, like when we were saying like the things that you have to do that aren't the fun things.
Yeah.
When you are doing them for yourself, you have that little bit more motivation, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
I think is so beneficial versus it's got to be hard to not have, well, I mean, we've been in jobs that we didn't own. So it's, you know, it is hard to be motivated on some of those things when you're like, I really don't want to and don't care to, you know, so that's got that, you know, for when it is your own thing that you're like, I can kick and scream as long as I want, but I know I'm doing it. So I'm like,
Right.
I know I'm the one still doing it.
Exactly.
That's true.
I can't call in sick because I know what game I'm playing.
No. But I will say, because we don't have sort of a forward facing shop, like, you know, you have a retail, like people are coming in to see you. I will say, if, you know, we tend to pick our own hours, as it were, like if I need to take a nap in the afternoon, I might take a nap in the afternoon, but it also means I'm probably going to work until 10 or 11 o'clock at night. So,
Right.
you know, like, we dye a lot of our yarn. In fact, we're going to, like, when we get off this call, we're going to go dye yarn for you. And, and so, we dye a lot of our yarn in the evening and tend to do other kinds of work for the business, like during the day. And I think we really appreciate having that flexibility.
Yeah.
But we're also working all the time too. So, you know.
Yep. There's that. And we were, you know, definitely being at a place in the beginning when it's like you had to be here during the certain hours and you didn't have enough to pay to have a bunch of employees. So
right.
You had to be the one that did that, plus all the other things that happen in the evening. But then once things, you know, we were lucky enough that things got rolling enough that we could have employees. And then now we, you know, even with the pandemic, it's like, okay, we were lucky enough to be at a place, well, that was different. But when we kind of got back up and going again and had employees back again, it was like, we're at a place that we can pay them and go take care of our families or go take care of ourselves. Or like Melissa's hours this morning was 3:30.
I started working at 3:30 this morning, and then I worked until about 10:30, maybe 11:30, and then but I took like a couple hour break in there to get my family off to school.
Right.
And then I did work for a little while. I took a 2-hour nap. Then I got back and did work again. And so it's, I don't necessarily, part of working for yourself, I'm getting to a place because I've been doing it for so long. I would like to have a little bit more structured hours so I could have a little bit more, I mean, we've talked about this in Making Comfort and Joy before, but more concrete time between on and off, because you work in your house, and I am not in the shop as much. Liz isn't either. We both are at the shop or at our houses more doing work.
Right.
So we're not with customers as much, which we would like to be with customers more. Just that, you know, we can't do all the things. And so, but I am getting to a place in my life where I'm just sort of like, I would like a little bit more like, this is work, this is life, cut it off. And not that,
because I think it makes it not easier, but like when you first have that flexibility of being like, okay, now I can run and do this for a couple hours, and then I'm going to go to this appointment, and then I'm going to go run this kit here, and then you start being like, that's great, and then all of a sudden you're like, this is not actually that great because it's chaotic and it's erratic and it's not enough long chunks of either of them. Really.
Right. I think the problem becomes for us anyway. It's not so much the chaos, because like even when I had sort of regular hours with my previous design job, like our schedules were still erratic. And we don't have kids, and so I think that makes it easier for us. But it's the never having really time for yourself. Like that's the thing that gets chopped off. Like you've got all the other things that you have to take care of, but the flexibility, what you do, well, except for maybe the nap I took this afternoon. Body
will do that on its own.
Right. Like other than the sleeping, there's not a ton of flexibility. I think, and for us in particular, the hard part about having a home business, I mean, it's been really like this whole past year, it's been totally fine for us because, I mean, honestly, our day to day, other than Brian not really having gigs anymore, there wasn't a huge change in our day today because, you know, our commute is just to walk down a flight of stairs and, you know, into the design studio. But it's the not having, you know, like sort of that separation.
Yes.
So like the fireplace in our bedroom that I've been wanting to paint since we moved in, like it just, you know, just doesn't get done. And the rose bushes that I bought 3 weeks ago are still sitting downstairs under the deck unplanted. And, you know, those kind of things are for me, because are the things that sort of get pushed by the wayside.
Well, and I think maybe even beyond being a small business owner, I think it speaks more to, like, and we were talking about this earlier, I think that maybe just speaks a little bit to who you two are.
Oh,
and
sure.
so, like, you know, if you were working for somebody else, you would have that same sort of drive where you'd be like, well, I'll just get this thing done and I'll get this thing done. And I'll empty out that inbox and I'll do this and I'll do this. And it's just sort of like,
it's just that innate character, you know.
And you just happen to be now a bit like, you happen to work for yourself, and so it just is like to the nth level.
Yeah,
it is like that. Yeah.
And I think that's something that I think a lot of us, like, you have the mentality of either people that are like, I'm going to take care of me, or there are other people like, I'm a people pleaser, I'm going to get it all done, I'm going to, you know, so like you have those two things that you're like, how do you balance that and change that, whether you're self-employed or not?
Right. It's just nicer when you don't have someone someone else standing over your head,
Right.
giving you a hard time about it. You might give yourself a hard time about it.
Yeah. Right.
Yep. I didn't take any naps when I was employed anywhere else. I got to tell you that. I didn't have
No.
any days.
And I honestly, like, I was not a nap taker as a child, and can encourage the hi. So I think Brian's going to join us. So I am full support behind an adult nap. Like
Me too.
I
think it's just a way to take care of yourself. Why not? I think that it's just really, I think the mentality, like, oh, just work and work and work, and, you know, oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Like that's a really toxic. And I'm not saying that I haven't played into that over time. I don't sleep well, but that isn't because, oh, I want to.
Right.
And I just struggle with insomnia, and mostly I can't turn off, you know, the anxiety. So
I'm that kind of person where I just can't turn off, so it's very hard for me to sleep. Brian didn't know that he was a morning person until he met me.
I had no idea. I've never dreamed I was a morning person. I don't have a problem going to sleep. I wake up and then I'm like.
So I will say we do have these moments of me sort of like in bed, not being able to sleep, and I finally drift off right about the time he wakes up.
Yes. Yep. I have no problem falling asleep.
Oh.
But then it's like, you know, it's like a nap, you know, I'll fall asleep, and then 3 hours later I'm just like, oh, I wish that conversation would have gone differently. Right.
No.
So
yeah, I'm definitely having that thought before going to sleep, and so
sure.
Yeah, I started doing that when I have a lot of those. I'm just like writing on a notepad, or I grab my phone and just start writing notes down. When I'm thinking that, like, if I write it down, then maybe I won't say it 500 times in my head. Like, it will be like, okay, you wrote it down. You don't have to keep repeating it. You will remember it in the morning. That's
right. That's a really nice idea. I am more of a try to distract myself. So like I tend to listen to books and like not even like good, like enriching books. Like I like to listen to like trashy romance novels and then play, you know, games on my phone. That's my like try to forget it, which doesn't really work. So I think I need to try the write it down.
Sure.
Right. Instead of a dream journal, it's like an anxiety journal.
Exactly. Someone was talking earlier about your song of the day. Tell us about that.
Oh, well, so Brian, as I mentioned, is a musician. He plays upright bass. He's a trained jazz bassist, and he plays lots of different kinds of music because if you're going to be a working musician, you kind of, so like at one time, like he was playing with a children's singer in a bluegrass band, in a folk trio, in, you know, like just a whole bunch of different kind of things to play music. And one of those groups is he has his own group, and I'm the girl singer in his band. It was a lifelong dream of mine to be the girl singer in a jazz band. And when I married my husband, well, actually before I married my husband,
that's who you looked for, so you could do the dream.
Well, yeah, like I saw him. He was actually that's actually how we met. He was playing music. And you know, musicians, man.
Right.
So we so we perform like in public for money sometimes as a group. And so when things kind of shut down in the beginning, we started putting, every once in a while we put up a just, you know, the two of us at home, him playing the bass and the two of us singing. We put up some songs on Instagram, our song of the day, and we have not done one in a really long time. And it's something that we talk about. Oh man, we should do that. But you know, like at a certain, it's hard to, you know, like once you stop doing something, sometimes it's hard to start again. And like once you start again, like it's easy and it's not a problem. It's the starting again. So yeah, we haven't done one in a while.
Anytime you're ready.
Yeah.
We
Right
all
now.
Right now. All right, we can do that. We'll do it. Sure. Let's see. Can I flip the camera around so that?
Yes.
Woo! Look, there's bases.
It's ready.
We've got multiple bases. See if we can get the dog. Let me see if I can get the camera to like not cut off Brian's head. I'm probably gonna have to raise the. Pardon me while I.
Oh, this is so wonderful.
Yeah. What a cool surprise.
I think that's what we've been talking a little bit about. When will it be safe to do live music, you know, in larger venues? Or do you have any gigs booked?
Well, Brian and I just played a gig at a assisted living place. So it was like an hour of singing to a really, really lovely group of older people who, my favorite is like the one lady in the back who sang all the words to every song. So I have the camera turned around. Are we in frame? We can't.
Yes,
see.
you're good.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's perfect.
The other one was the couple that got there 30 minutes early while I was setting up, and then they fell asleep during the show.
Yeah.
On the front row.
Together. It was adorable.
I always say good music puts me to sleep. It's the bad music that keeps me awake.
That's true.
But this song is going to incorporate the mighty kazoo.
Yeah, Brian's going to play kazoo and bass, and we're both going to sing. It's a song by Louis Prima and his then wife, Keely Smith, who is a Virginia native. And it's called Nothing's Too Good for My Baby. Nothing's too good for my baby, oh sugar baby. Nothing's good for my baby, 'cause my baby's so good and kind to me. When he holds me in his arms, oh those big and brawny arms, happy heart goes right up to the sky. He makes me think of pretty things, maybe even wear their wedding ring. And if it was for him, I'd learn to bake a pie.
It's nothing's too good for my baby. For my baby. Sugar, sugar, baby.
Sugar.
Nothing's too good for my baby.
For my baby.
Cause my baby's so good and kind to me. Ba-da-ba-da-ba. Da-na-na-na-do. Da-na-na-na-do. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-na. Da-na-na-na-do. Da-na-na-na-do. And just for you, I'd hit you in the eye.
And just for you, I'd like to see you try.
And just for you, I'd let you take a pie.
Oh my gosh, you guys! Oh, that is so wonderful. What a treat.
Oh, I'm so glad you enjoyed it.
That must be so fun to be able to do with your husband. I mean, how
Wonderful.
I love it.
Yeah, so like in our family, really, all business is family business, I guess. So
That is
we
awesome.
yarn together, we sing songs together.
I
Yeah.
just love it. I just love it. Oh. How, so you met playing music or you met, Brian, you had a gig.
Yes.
Yeah, so I had a friend. Well, the long version is that my girlfriend was seeing this older man, and he had a friend, and they
Come on, just come out. She was on a blind date.
I was on a blind date with a guy that turned out to be a good mutual friend of ours. And he had invited me out to this local brewery to hear a bluegrass band. And so Brian was on stage.
And I was smitten with her red Christmas socks.
I was wearing Christmas socks in February. And then afterwards, because my blind date / friend was friends with the guys in the band, we went out to another bar and had a drink somewhere else afterwards. And then afterwards, my friend Stacy, the girlfriend who had sort of gotten me into all this mess, she lived in an apartment not too far away. And Brian said the famous line. So as we were all leaving and talking about going to Stacy's house, Brian tells our now mutual friend, "Oh, you've seen her apartment.
You don't need to go."
You don't need to go."
And he was like, "Oh, I see her apartment. I don't need to go. Oh, no, I'm going home."
So
The longer story is he ended up dating her friend.
my original friend who set me up.
It was a scam.
It was a story.
What?
And and like all relationships, there was some breakups and some makeups and some stuff in between, but
I love it.
Oh,
that's how the magic really happened.
Wonderful.
So how do you not get sick of each other?
Right.
I don't know. Not to say that we don't, as Brian likes to say, want to put an ice pick through each other's head every once in a while. I do actually.
That old
saying.
Uh-huh.
Well, I mean, you can.
But yes, well, I was just talking about that this week. I said very early in playing music, I had a friend who kind of played in bands that worked 6 nights a week at hotels, and he was like kind of road savvy that I didn't have. And he said, if you play music with somebody long enough, you're going to want to put an ice pick through their forehead. And he said it without any judgment. It's just like that's just what happens when you're in this like close knit relationship. That that there's no steam to let off, and then punch my face.
So, not to say that there aren't some heated moments in our life together, but I genuinely like spending time with him.
Yeah.
And, so
We try to keep it civil. I had a lot of teachers in college who, like to make me cry. So I try not to make Aimee cry when we practice.
Well, not anymore. I will say early on in our performing life together, there were some tears. That generally all of our rehearsals ended with me crying. That doesn't really happen anymore. Like we've gotten past that, and
she's become a professional.
apparently I'm a professional. But there was definitely a time when there were a few more tears.
Yes, we gotten over that hill, and now we're coasting down.
Yes,
into the valley of happiness.
In the valley of happiness. Yes.
Start dying. Were you always interested in that? And you're like, Brian, this is what you're gonna do with me? Or
yeah.
She totally started doing it like, I'm doing this thing and I'm gonna see if you're gonna support me. And I'm like, let's do it. I would have been supportive all through the beginning process. She was like expecting me to say, what are you doing? I'm like, no, let's do it. And then it grew into like this thing that it turned into like our first order. And then she fell and hurt herself. She actually broke a couple ribs. And I ended up having to like I was her arms. I was the physical brain. I was doing it. She'd telling me what to do. So I kind of learned by trial by fire how to dye yarn.
Yeah. So when we first started out, I got literally got our first wholesale order. And then promptly the next day fell and broke 3 ribs. And had to go to the hospital for a while. It was just one of those like sort of freak things. Woke up in the middle of the night, my blood pressure dropped and caused me to pass out like on the way to the bathroom, and fell on the footboard of our bed, which it was awful. I'm just gonna say it was awful.
It was awful.
It was awful.
It's awful for me because I had to take her to the hospital and they all were like, why are you beating your wife?
Well,
and we had a friend who's a doctor. She was like, what time was it? She's like, 4 a.m.? No, that's not, spousal abuse time. That's spousal abuse time. That's midnight.
Yeah. So we, so Brian had to basically just jump in. And then so like from like really the beginning, he sort of had to learn how to do it. When it kind of really legit became a business, and has just sort of, he and I just sort of been there all the time. And for a long time, he was sort of the silent little fox. Like he definitely, and then a couple of years ago, he actually started to come out and like do shows with me and like meet customers. And
I passed up gigs to do yarn shows.
That's a really big deal.
Whoa.
I don't know if you know, but that's a really big deal that he gave up gigs to come sell yarn with me.
You must kind of like yarn.
I think so. I've been trying to teach him how to knit. So part of I'm not trying to teach him because like we do know where our boundaries are.
Right, I was gonna say.
So again, our friend who was kind of coming in as our assistant there right before the pandemic happened in March last year, right around the same time, she started to teach Brian how to knit and kind of got him started. And I don't know that it's any great desire of his to knit, but I think he would like to know what he's talking about when he talks to people.
I've learned how to knit, and I don't knit very often. I've kind of fell off, but I learned how to knit because I wanted to know just some of the mechanics and be able to talk about some of the vernacular, just kind of understand it from the inside out. And so I think I got that, but
he's been working on the same swatch since we started last March. So
I don't know how to say it. It's I'm having trouble sparking joy.
Yeah.
I think I'm also been in the last year had some trouble sparking joy with my knitting. So
yeah. That's fair if you don't pick it up for a while.
Yeah.
It's even those of us who have been doing it for 20 years or more, it's like sometimes I don't know. It's hard to get motivation to do much.
Yeah.
I feel like things are on the other side, but
Comes and goes in small spurts, but that's better than it at least it's coming sometimes. So
Right. No, I definitely felt that. Like, I don't know that I finished a project in 2020, with the exception I did start, like in this last spring, I started a dog sweater for our Chihuahua, Stanley. And I think I finished it in December. And then it, like, when I finished it, it doesn't, like, because I didn't have a pattern. I just sort of made something up. and it doesn't really even fit in that well. It was like the one thing that I finished. You know, I cast on a bunch of stuff.
Right.
And so now I've got like 12 projects on the needles, and I really just want to cast on something else new because I'm kind of tired of the same 12 things I've been literally knitting on for over a year. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever knit with, so I mean, we kind of know how this is, and I imagine we'll know what your answer is, but do you always knit with your yarn, or do you ever, because, you know, there's only so much time to like knit samples or knit swatches or have basically like fodder for Instagram, you know, but and how your bases are going to work. But do you ever work with other dyers that are your friends and just, you know?
I like supporting my dyeing friends, and there's so much beautiful yarn out there, and I buy it and with the intention of knitting with it, and really don't knit with anything else because of all the reasons that you just said. Like, I mean, ultimately for me, I have very little knitting time anyway, or at least time where I want to knit. Because if you got your hands in yarn all day, you don't necessarily want to like end your day just sitting on the sofa knitting, because you've kind of felt like you've been in it all day anyway.
Right.
And especially if it is something that's not really, I just realized Pip was surprised. So I would love to knit with other yarn, but I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Out of all your bases, like, which is, I know that this is a hard question, but like, what's your desert island yarn? Which of them?
Oh, yeah, like that's really hard, because you know there are yarns for different moods. There are You're asking me to pick one of my children.
I know.
Yes. That you want to spend the rest of your life with and none of the others.
And you will never.
Yeah. Right now I am knitting 2 projects, 3 projects. One of them is a sweater that's been abandoned, and I think it may not ever be picked up again. Because, but I'm holding Vixen and Nuanced together on those projects, and it's kind of the best.
She's cheating. That's 2.
We'll allow it.
That's why I say it. They know what I'm talking about. That is, I think, like, just for what I've got like on my needles and what I've been personally enjoying lately, I am almost finished with the Satellite Shawl by Andrea Mowry. You know, it's got like stripes and a bit of brioche, and I've got like a section and a half left. Like, I'm like, literally I can see the finish line on this project. And it's been so fun to knit, but also like it's a shawl and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And when it takes you like, you know, half an hour to get across a row, you're just sort of like, eh.
Yeah.
And
I think it's gonna go great. It's gonna go great, and then it just never ends.
Like, oh,
yes. And I'm at the like never ending portion of the project, but it's so close. Like, it's actually going to be finished pretty soon. Awesome. And so that has been a real pleasure to knit when I got my head in it. And though I will say I do have a new yarn that's coming.
Tell us about the new yarns. A few people have been asking about your new yarns, and so there are 2, correct?
There's one that's out that just came out like last week before, called Willow. And it is a sport weight, organic merino and hemp yarn. So it's like a 70-30. It's a 2-ply, and I have got a couple of skeins set aside that I'm like, ooh, I think I need to make myself something with this yarn. But I really do feel like I need to finish at least one project before I cast on. So I'm trying to be good. I really am trying to be good. So willow, we're super excited about. So we had our linea base is very similar. And there were some production issues with our mill. Like we've been waiting since like last August to receive the yarn, and then we received it and there was an issue with actually the linen content in it. And anyway, it's been a very, very sad spring for us. But in the course of all of that sadness, we did actually find, you know, another base that kind of slots right in there. So all of the patterns, like Jacqueline Cieslak designed the Rift Tee in that linear base, and the willow, I mean, that would just be a really great, that just slots in really beautifully. Alicia Plummer has one called Favorite Flannel that she designed for us in the linear base that, again, like it's just in the willow is just going to be really gorgeous. Awesome. So we are really excited about this base. The hemp in it like doesn't take the dye at all, so you get this really beautiful heathered effect to the yarn. And also the hemp gives it this kind of wild looking halo that is not, I mean, obviously the hemp is a little crisp, but like any linen, it softens up with use, and it's still really soft in the hand, so it's not like when you're touching it. Right. I'm really, really happy with this space. Yeah.
Awesome.
So summery stuff. And then the other new one that we have that will be coming out, hopefully, we're looking like maybe towards the end of June, is a, we don't have a name for it. If anyone wants to send us name suggestions, we are really open to it.
I have a name.
Well, Brian has a name, and we can discuss that. So it is a washable wool that's non-superwash. So it's used. So it's a merino, and it's organic merino that has a GOTS certified process where they use organic compounds to kind of make the yarn washable, as opposed to doing the sort of traditional superwash process. Awesome. And the idea is I would eventually like to carry the yarn in. So we're going to start with a DK, and I would like to offer it in maybe fingering and worsted as well. But we're starting right now with the DK, and we're trying to come up with a name. And also, like, it's a really awesome yarn, but I haven't quite found the perfect verbiage to like describe it, because it takes more than just non-superwash or superwash. Like, there's some extra words that need to happen. Right. So I'm still like mentally working on that. Brian wants to call it
Sasquatch,
because he is a Bigfoot aficionado.
To say, I instantly thought of a friend of mine.
Yeah.
It's natural.
Yeah.
Exactly. You've never seen it before.
No. So
is it like, Brian, I mean, do you want to sell this yarn, or?
I just like punny. I like punny words, and I like giving Aimee a hard time.
So there's a part of me that he always makes me laugh. Like, literally, I laugh all the time. And there's a part of me that wants to give in to him, but the other part of me like knows that we're not going to call this Sasquatch.
It does sound different than maybe some of the other base names you have.
Yes, so there's that too.
But it wouldn't make people,
I mean, it doesn't like evoke the same emotion as nuage.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And so
but I'd read up on what that yarn was. I would.
Yeah.
So how does it take up color, and does it have more of that same bounce as a non-superwash?
Yeah. So as I'm knitting swatches with it, what I'm finding is that it takes color beautifully. And sure, yeah, you want to put your hand, Brian's got to go put his hands on some. And it's knitting up great. Like, I love that. Yeah, I mean, it's a non-superwash yarn. So I'm really really excited about giving it a whirl. I have been sort of in all of our yarn selections that we've made in the last 2 years, I would say they've all been non-superwash yarns, and I like going in that direction. But what I'm finding is that, because we do offer like a non-superwash worsted yarn, which I love. And for people, not everybody wants they're a little afraid to take care of their knits. And I'm like, well, aren't you taking care of your, I mean, even if it's a non, yes. So, you know, this is,
yeah.
Cool.
yeah. So.
And how many colors are you doing in that?
So that's the other decision that I'm making, sort of coming into good stuff. That's the other thing that I'm sort of working on, just to get it released. We'll probably do it in like, I don't know, 15 or 20 colors. Obviously we have a huge color palette, and you know, I can dye it on any of those colors, but sometimes it's nice to have sort of a cohesive, just sort of to get it open and out of the gate, because I'm not going to dye 40 colors to then just to release it originally. So
how do you pick your colors, and when you're doing that, do you do a lot of, or if you kind of been like, these are our colors right now we're playing with bases more, or you like to still introduce new colors, or how do you like to do that?
Because we do have a fairly broad palette of color, I tend to maybe more seasonally. So like in the spring and the fall, come out with a few colors. So like last fall, we came out with 4 new colors that I really loved. And this spring, there were 2 new colors, and there will probably be some more colors coming in the fall. And you know, I like to spend time thinking about color. You know, sometimes, I'll be honest, sometimes things accidentally end up in the dye pot that you weren't really supposed to happen, and a little magic happens. Like, there have been a few colorways that have come along because of that.
Happy accidents.
Happy accidents. And because I am pretty meticulous about note taking and keeping track of what's actually happening, unless it's just like a straight up alchemy issue, because we do have some one of a kind colorways where it's just the dye broke in a particular way that I can't necessarily automatically recreate,
or can't recreate them in multiple ways,
or can't recreate, you know, in any kind of repeatable way. But you know, because I do try to take good notes, and if I do make a mistake, I make note of that and what happened. I am able to sort of so if it does turn into something awesome, I can salvage it into like a real color. And occasionally we'll make something that I don't necessarily love, but we can put but as you know, you can put a good name on it, and it sort of becomes a color that you love.
Right.
Mm-hmm. We have a color that's sort of an acidy green that's got some blues and browns in it that started out as an accident, and Brian called it Swamp Thing, and now I kind of love it a lot. And especially like when we first dyed it, I'm like, I really wanted to just knit everything with Swamp Thing, because yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, so I so going into the fall, like there might be a couple of new colors, and we'll sort of dye towards that palette. Not to say that other colors aren't available. Anytime someone wants something, we're usually pretty happy, unless it just can't be fixed. Oh, speaking of which, I fixed the issue with the silver sage yarn I'm supposed to dye for you.
Oh, wonderful.
It was totally like wrong thing in the pot. Wrote the wrong thing down. So we're gonna get that taken care of for you. Yeah, I'm usually the one actually putting dye in pots, and you know, sometimes your mind wanders and you lose count like what pot you're on and whether something went into a pot or not.
Well, yeah, it's like simultaneous. You know, we're working together, and she's doing this really heavy mental work, and I'm doing this like thoughtless, you know, physical work where I'm thinking of things all like, you know, I'm running lists in my mind, and I'm like, you know, I used to like, hey Amy, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I'm counting, like, leave me alone. So we have a period during the dying process where there's quiet, everyone is focused. I shut my mouth.
I generally like to have some tunes on in the studio when we're dyeing yarn, and anytime I make a mistake, Brian like cuts off my music and he doesn't let me.
Like, Dad lost the car. We're cutting off the music. Emergency.
Yeah.
What do you listen to in the studio?
A lot. Well, I started to say everything, but that is not true. Basically, anything that was made in the 20th century, I guess, would be a good.
Sometimes we listen to specific things. Sometimes we just go like the Spotify route and do a playlist. But I'd say a lot of jazz. I listen to a lot of jazz.
Yeah.
Aimee doesn't always like the jazz.
Well, as we actually were discussing last night, because we had been prepping a lot of yarn yesterday, and so we had been listening to some jazz, and specifically I had put on, like in the morning, I had put on like a 50s jazz playlist, and it was sort of playing all the big sort of jazz hits that you would sort of recognize in hearing from like the 1950s. And then at some point he turned it to like some other album. Do you remember who you put on where I was like, please turn this off?
I put on the bassist Dave Holland.
English
bassist. And it was a duo record with just piano and bass. It was very complimentary. And then I put on like a trio with like saxophone, bass, and drums. And it was just like what I like to call crazy people music. It's like,
yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I love it. And he was like,
right, I can't.
It stresses me out. Like, I mean, like literally, like I start to get like heart palpitations and I start to tense up. And we were trying to paint a room at our old house, you know, years ago. And I was like thinking Motown, like I want to groove. Let's put some music on. And he puts on something crazy, like some really like atonal, like free jazz. Thought I was gonna lose my mind. So
yeah,
it's probably just tell them our secret. We have a secret.
What?
We have a secret that always surprises people. Aimee and I, almost in all things, look at it different. We have like a different like way, like
completely.
We look at, like I'm like, we should do C, J, L, and she's like, we should do X, Y, Z, and like, we're always, but we come together and we find a way in life, in love, and in work.
Yes.
But yeah, we do not always think, and that's why we compliment each other, because like we don't always see things from the same perspective. Ever. We always see things from a different way. Yeah.
And like it's good that we don't work together anymore. It's good.
I love that.
That's amazing that you have the opposite thing, but you still make it work.
Right. Well, I mean, the really cool thing about that is that like if I am struggling with something, trying to figure out how to make something work, I can sort of turn to him and he can come at it from a different angle than me. What's really frustrating is if I see it a certain way and think it should happen a certain way, and he sees it and we're not like those, like it's not connecting in either one of our brains. That's usually when the yelling starts. Yeah. Or they're not speaking to each other starts.
Yeah.
Well, we get to the other side. I think
we do get to the other side. Though.
My favorite is when I tell Aimee how we can do things better how we can do the things better that she showed me how to do.
He's constantly telling me how to do things that I taught him how to do. It's my favorite.
But I'm streamlining.
Yeah. Brian, did I mention he's a trained jazz musician? His idea of streamlining is to like add like 14 things to the process. Yeah.
Making it better.
He does. I will say though, because of his jazz brain, he does spend a lot of time thinking about how to like do things differently or better or and I ultimately appreciate that, but sometimes in the moment,
Yeah, you're like, I have a process. Let me do my process.
yeah.
Or
I tried
gonna-
really hard not to like tell him how to do his job, and I really wish he would not tell me how to do mine.
I love it.
Yeah.
You should show the beauty that you have right there.
Well,
and
I think I've posted this on Instagram before, but I just wanted to tell you that Vixen is probably, I'll show this and then we'll talk about our giveaway, but
yeah,
the 2 giveaways. But I think that Vixen is probably one of my desert island yarns. I mean, I've got to narrow it down, maybe like 10. No,
right.
But
I don't want to be asked that.
But the colorway that you dyed up for us for our yarn club,
it's the most magical.
it's probably, I mean, that really is, like, I keep going back to it, favorite time after time after time after time. Like, it's so good. And then I have had this yarn, so I like pairing yarns together from dyers that we have in the shop, because then I think about, like, how would these two in life like get along? And so this is I posted this sometime this winter, maybe, or this spring. This is Wobble Gobble's Birdie in a Tree, her Kidmo, Jai's Kidmo, and your Francisco Morazan.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah.
And so the skein, yeah. This is why I can't get enough of this mohair pairing. So it's like this pearly gray, beigey with a little bit of blush, and then the mohair.
Oh, yeah. So beautiful. Love that. So I really, really love seeing pairings with other dyers. Like, I love I love that happens, particularly in yarn shops, because you've got sort of that whole palette of all of us kind of all coming together. And so when I see those pairings, I'm always like, oh, that's so pretty, because that's something that obviously, like, I couldn't completely make that on my own, but we've made it together.
I love that.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. We've got a couple minutes before we get cut off. The giveaway is going to be online. It'll be the same thing. It'll be starting tomorrow. Definitely not early this time because I forgot. So it is going to be, if you go to woolandhoney.com, and then under the events, it'll be Making Comfort and Joy giveaway. And so tomorrow from 8 to 2, it'll be ready, and we'll have the 2 giveaways on there. You want to talk about those?
Yeah. So we have a sweater's worth of nuage, and paired with Brooklyn Tweed Morel in Veil, and a Vaccination Saves Lives pin. And then Aimee has been so gracious. Aimee and Brian have been so gracious to give away 4 skeins of Vixen in tomato. So
yes.
So you'll have the chance to register or to go for both. So
I would totally love both of those prizes.
I know.
Yeah. So we'll have that up tomorrow, and
when it's safe, we want you to come to the shop.
I want to come. So my parents were
together,
traveling.
Stay here.
You can perform too.
Yes. Yes. So when it's safe, we would love it. And
we would absolutely love that too. Yeah. My folks were traveling kind of near where you were, and we're within like just a few miles of your shop, like 2 summers ago. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you didn't go to Wool and Honey. And my mom's sort of like, really? I mean, but I would have been there in a heartbeat.
Oh, well, soon. Let's do it soon. And I'm going to stop us now only just so we save the station.
All right. Bye, love.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you so much for having us.